Hello everyone and welcome to more How Good Are We? Today we're going to talk about two characters who mean well, who say they have a whole bunch of cool stuff to them, but actually have some crippling weaknesses. And today we're going to start out with Mifuyu, the master of being a two-faced bee, where we're going to talk about, of course, how everyone probably already knows that she is an Excel gorilla, a dark type of such, and she is a support type, even though we might have to question that a little bit later. Some people might also know that her personal memoria also has redraw discs, which can be used sometimes if you've drawn a really bad hand, of course, to reshuffle your hand. But of course, there's no guarantee that you will get something good when you redraw discs. But at least if you're playing Mifuyu like a support, as her type might indicate, then having a memoria like this might be really awesome to have. So it's at least a memoria that I can see people use and that might have some usefulness here and there. Moving on, though, we see her stats are somewhat balanced, but are pretty alright on the defense. Has pretty good HP, somewhat good defense as well, so she won't die that fast. And her attack is, well, at least it isn't zero, but her attack is also, it's somewhat in the midfield, I would say. But like for a support, it's actually quite high, but overall, if you're comparing this to other attacker type characters or to Magier characters, pure Magier characters, they'll probably all have quite a bit higher attack than Mifuyu will have. Moving on, though, her connect is rather interesting in that it has absolutely no damage up or attack up on it at all. It has Excel MP gain up 50% and chance to dazzle on attack. And yes, of course, dazzle, since it is a level 3 status aimant, it also has on it that when an enemy has this dazzle on them, then they will take bonus damage from the element they are weak against. But that's basically the only way that you have that this connect can make someone deal more damage than before. Apart from that, it's really just the Excel MP gain up and like the effect that dazzle has, which is the chance for enemies to miss. And I know I often say something about how good dazzle is as an effect. Dazzle is a really good effect, but I'm gonna have to talk a bit more about that in just a second, because we need to talk about her Magia as well, which also dazzles all enemies with a 55% chance. Already, why 55% chance? This should have been 100% for her to be good, but nah. Because here's the thing, this Magia does nothing else other than remove buffs, and guess what? Most of the time when you use this, the enemy won't have buffs anyway. And I mean, if the enemy has attack buffs, usually if enemies have attack buffs on them, they will like reapply attack buffs to them like every turn or every second turn, so removing that won't matter much. The only time where this really matters is when you remove defense buffs, and those don't happen that often. So already this is something that won't be too amazing most of the time, and apart from that, it really only just dazzles and does some damage. And it only has a chance to dazzle. So when the only thing that in most cases the Magia does is has a chance to dazzle, then this does not look like a good Magia at all. Especially when she's supposed to be a support type, and the only way she can support is by sometimes dazzling enemies. That's not what I would call a good kid. Like, yeah, dazzle is an amazing effect, but having someone on, like having one of your characters, maybe let's say most people run with a 3-person team, which what I think is the correct, the best team size in most cases. Like when you run with a 3-person team, having one of those people be someone who only applies dazzle and not even guaranteed, like sometimes applies dazzle, is that worth a slot on your team? Probably not. Maybe the doppel is better, maybe the doppel is something crazy. No, it's just, well, the chance of dazzle goes up to 100%. And also, guess what? The dazzle only lasts for a single turn, even if it hits. And I guess if you doppel, then it might last 2 turns. And at least it has 100% chance. That's quite a bit better, but even so, it does nothing else other than that. Why not some buffs? We have all of these other supports that are really good by placing buffs, and I know I usually repeat the same ones like Harin, Ao, Madoka, etc, etc. But even so, even if you look outside of those, just look at any character that, for example, gives everyone an Excel MP gain up, gives everyone an attack up, some damage up, some Magia bonus, some other effects that people might have, or even just characters that can buff themselves. We have the Yachio Mifuyu do a unit which buffs itself with like attack up and crit and all that stuff, and I think like defense pierce or whatever. Like, why not give some buffs or even debuffs, like lasting debuffs, like defense down or whatever, or attack down even. Like, it's not that strong, but maybe it's something to give to opponents other than maybe a one-turn dazzle. And for someone who is an Excel type, who, I mean, we aren't at the spirit enhancement effects yet, but who has a lot of tools to get to Magia very fast and is going to use a lot of Magia, for someone like that to have a Magia that sometimes afflicts a one-turn dazzle is terrible, actually. That is actually terrible. Basically, just play it for the damage. In most cases, just play it for the damage. Not to mention that if you're playing Mifuyu, you're probably also using Connect very often. You might be attacking. You might be using her active. Like, you have so many sources of dazzle that her Magia might not even make a big difference. But yeah, let's actually talk about the Spirit Enhancement. Chance of dazzle on attack, that's really good. Mega damage up, you have some crit for some reason, I don't know why, because he's not attack type. I don't know. Anti-Magia Seal, that's important. That's actually really important for a character to have. Not that there isn't much Magia Seal out there. There's only a handful of enemies in the game that do that. But whenever enemies like that appear, the game really wants to force you to not use Magia. So having your character still be able to play Magia can actually be really good. And it's just one of the nodes on here. Some damage coverage is nice to help survive longer. Skill Quicken as a support, always important to have. Some bunch of MP gain nodes. Excel MP gain up, only 12.5%, but still it's fine for Magia damage. But most importantly, which I've danced around this entire time so far, MP gauge increased on Start 15%, which is 30 MP. That's really good as well. So if you play her in mirrors, you can actually use her in the next ranked mirrors whenever that happens to quickly get to Magia. And I will say that at least in ranked mirrors, a Magia that is as bad as this might actually have a use, because you'll actually start out with quite a bit of MP and you can get to your Magia really quickly. And it will give you like bonuses in like it will increase the advantage that you have. Enemies might be buffed, and they might get hit by dazzle, and it's not going to do that much damage. But hey, it's probably going to do a good job of giving you more ranking points in that sense. So for ranked mirrors, I guess I can see it. But like I said, she has a bunch of tools in here to get to Magia fast, especially also with her active, which gives Excel MP gain up. 20% for one turn isn't a whole lot, but still it's something. That I know I keep harping on about how bad the Magia actually is, but keep in mind, like I said, this is an Excelius character who gets a bunch of Excel MP gain and MP gain bonuses, who even gets MP gauge start, who is supposed to use Magia. This is a character built around Magia. She even helps other people get to Magia. You are supposed to play her on a Magia team. She's a Magia character, and her Magia is bad. Make of that what you will. But yeah, not that this surprises us with Mifuyu. So overall, I still have to say, if there are enemies that can get completely screwed over by being dazzled, or like for example that have dodge, for example dodging enemies in exchange quests, they get completely screwed over by dazzle. This is really good to have. This character is really good to have against them, or characters that tend to buff themselves quite a lot as well. A lot of characters in exchange quests also do that. So I guess there are still many exchange quests where you could take a Mifuyu along just to dazzle, to cancel evades, and just to remove enemy buffs. But even so, I still very much prefer someone who just buffs my entire team with like 40% attack up and debuffs the entire enemy team with like 40% attack down. And like there are characters that do stuff like that I just like that way more than trying to like sort of play around everything in a really weird style, other than just, just stack damage and kill enemies. That always works. Moving on though, we have another character to talk about. And it's Charu, the detective Charu, who also has a personal that is actually the detective badge right here. That's her detective badge, which for some reason she doesn't wear on her magical outfit, even though it's like a treasured badge. I don't know. Anyway, it gives defense down to one enemy and removes those elements. The reason why I bring it up as the very first thing that I do is because it's bad. Ignore it. Doesn't matter. So let's talk about Charu. She has 2 blast discs and 2 charge discs. Only 1 Excel disc. Is that maybe something that might come back as a problem later? we'll test it out. But first off, some people didn't even know about this, but she's actually an amazing tank. She has insane HP and insane defense. She's like the number 2, like number 3 most high defense character in the entire game, and she also has amazing HP on top of that, which is pretty good. And hey, at least she still also has above 10,000 attack, although just barely, like super duper barely, but still, technically she has above 10,000. What's her connect? It gives attack up. That's okay. That's already better than freaking. And it also gives 100% bind and 100% stun. They both do basically the same thing. They both actually do exactly the same thing, with the only difference that bind also makes it so that enemies can't heal if they afflict it with bind, because it's a level 3 status ailment. So the reason why, you might be thinking to yourself, why both of these? Well, in case the enemy has status ailment resistance, one of those might miss, but likely it's likely that not both of those are gonna miss. It's likely that at least one of them will miss, so that just makes it more likely to afflict at least one of these on your enemy. And secondly, as I always mention, there are some hard challenge quests where enemies might have immunities to bind specifically, because bind as such can be very powerful against big bosses, that they just might have complete immunities against bind, or like resistances against it. So having another effect on it that enemies might not have immunity against is actually really good as well. So she just really wants to make sure that at least one of those hits. Of course, there are still enemies that might have immunities to both, or it's like 100% status ailment resistance. I wonder, man, if only there was someone who could reduce enemy status ailment resistance, and then we could make sure this works. So her Magia gives status ailment resistance down against enemies. Awesome. Sadly, single target, and this is, I don't like this as a single target. Oh man, imagine if this was like not single target. By the way, this Magia is called Magical Constable Chiharu Detective Stories. Awesome. Yeah, so single target, it gives defense down 30% at Magia level 5, status ailment resistance down 25% at Magia level 5. Awesome. And it also has a chance to bind, because of course it does. Similarly, her Doppel just does the same but better, as you would expect. You know what would be really awesome? If her Doppel actually was an area of effect. And there are actually sometimes cases where the Doppel has a different targeting than Magia has. For example, Cool Homura, her Magia is hit every enemy once, but her Doppel is hit 5 random targets. So that happens sometimes, that it can actually change from Magia to Doppel what it attacks, but sadly it is not the case. Why am I so sad that it doesn't hit everyone? Well, because defense down against everyone would be really awesome, and status ailment resistance, especially this, status ailment resistance down, would be really, really good to put on multiple enemies, because when you're using, well, the Magia itself, or when you're using a connect, you're probably, like, if there are multiple enemy units on the field, you're probably going to hit multiple enemies, and if every single enemy has reduced ailment resistance, they're probably all gonna get hit by a bind or by a stun, and that can give you completely free turns. But since it's single target, you have to single out some enemies to destroy, and the other ones might go free. However, this might not make that much of a difference, of course, if you're fighting against a singular boss, but also singular bosses most often are actually exactly the kind of enemies that have high ailment resistance or high immunities, but of course, at least you have the status ailment resistance down, so if it's just status ailment resistance, we can fight that. That's at least something we can do. Let's see if her Spirit Enhancement continues with that. Well, let's not forget she is a defense type, so she does get Endure on quest. She gets Provoke passively, so you can run other Provoke and Guardian Memoria passively on her to make her take a lot of hits for your team. So just by being able to take many hits for your team, because let's not forget she's insanely tanky, she already is very useful. She's already doing like the same thing like a Kokoro does, or that like a Kirika does, for example, or a Sayaka, which is take hits for your team and you just don't die. What else does she do? Of course, damage cut. She has chance to bind on attack. Of course she does. And she also has anti-bind herself. So in a bondage match between Mami and Charu, Charu just simply is the winner. And she stuns on top of that by clonking her in the face probably. So, sorry Mami, there's a new bind queen in town. Actually, she has been in town for like over a year, because it's like, look at that. It's been like over a year since Charu was released actually. But not that many people care about her because she's unlimited. And that's simply the truth. By the way, in case you don't know, is that unlimited characters really make barely any money. Even if it's a really awesome character, unlimited characters just don't make money. It's as simple as that. And they released a ton of unlimited characters at the start of Arc 2, which is why the start of Arc 2 was known as like the time when Mega Record fell quite hard in revenue, because they released so many unlimited characters that no one was rolling and everyone was like saving for the next big limited character. Anyway, what else does she have? Some more MP gain up, awesome MP gain, whatever. That's the regular stuff. She has 1 charge disc damage up, 2 charge disc damage up, 3 charge disc damage up. It has a total of 30% charge disc damage up, so her charge discs actually hit quite hard. And her active is at attack town, sadly only against a single enemy, and it's only 35%. At least it's a short cooldown, so you can kind of spam it. So yeah, overall, I said earlier at the beginning of this video that these 2 characters, they mean well, they have some cool stuff, but they have some very quick crippling weaknesses. For Mifuyu, it's the fact that she literally only does Dazzle and nothing else. I mean, yeah, remove buffs sometimes when enemies even do it, but like apart from that, does nothing else, which is kind of bad, because most other characters, pretty much any other character, does more. Even 4-star characters do more. And Charu, her glaring weakness is that, well, she means really well with bind and stun and everything, but you know, her Magia is single target and she doesn't even get to it because she only has 1 Excel disc. Imagine if she actually had an AoE Magia and had more than 1 Excel disc, she would actually be really good. Instead, she plays like a Charge Blast character. I mean, which is fine if you had a lot of attack. Now that Charge is a bit better, but she doesn't even have that much attack because she's a tank. So she's a tank with trying to hit hard with her discs. I don't like that. But hey, at least she has got really good stun and bind on her. She's really tanky herself, so she can at least defend enemies. So you kind of have to sort of forget about her Magia and sort of the potential that you could have to like set up for your entire team. For example, you play this along Olivia, for example, and you could status aim resistance down on the enemy so that your Olivia can curse harder. Just you could set up for so many characters in this game to reduce status aim resistance, but like I said, she only has 1 Excel disc, and that's just bad. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, I guess, and I'll see you guys next time.